IG. Oh God. Whoa. Okay, ain't nobody fucking with my click.
Hello, everyone. My name is Omar Simpson. You already saw what I thought and what I believe to be the top three threats to Miami Heat of the Eastern Conference. Right now, I'm going to ask my friend and my roommate, Samir Ahmed, who he believes are the top three threats to Miami. So, first and foremost, Samir, you don't have to rank them right now, but just tell me, who do you think are three threats to the Miami Heat for this upcoming season?
The three threats I believe that can potentially challenge the Miami Heat, not overthrow them, not win the title, but potentially challenge them. That's the key phrase, potentially challenge. I would go with the Indiana Pacers, who took Miami to 7 games last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Brooklyn Nets, with the addition of 2 future Hall of Famers, KG and Paul Pierce, and the return of the chosen one in Chi-Town, Derrick Rose, as they like to call him. A little controversy in Derrick Rose's return last year. People thought maybe Chicago could overturn Miami in terms of winning the Eastern Conference, but that seems a little ridiculous. Let's start off with the Indiana Pacers right here.
Sure, why not? What do you think about the Pacers?
The emergence of Paul George last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. He took LeBron James task to task, even though LeBron James and his team pretty much won the series. You can't discredit the effort Paul George put in that series, averaging over 20 points a game, doing his best to guard LeBron James. Potentially, if it wasn't for a Game 1 defensive collapse by that Indiana Pacers team, maybe they could have been in the Eastern Conference Finals in the NBA Finals against the San Antonio Spurs. But the problem with the Pacers will be the bench. Will Danny Granger and Paul George coincide with each other in the court? That's one issue. Even though Danny Granger said he wouldn't mind coming off the bench, and you got Lance Stevenson. Now the other issue with the Pacers is the point guard play. They tried putting in Hill last year, George Hill, to pass the rock around. But the problem with that was that George Hill is not a point guard. He's essentially a shooting guard masquerading as a point guard, and his main focus is defense. Now let's get to the Chicago Bulls for a second.
Right. What do you think about the Chicago Bulls?
I think everyone's got to stop sipping on the Bulls Kool-Aid right here, Simpson. I think everyone thinking Derrick Rose is going to return, and Miami is going to be in big trouble. But you gotta realize there's 2 key issues there. One, Derrick Rose needs help. In NBA history, no one player wins a championship on their own.
LeBron James.
Ask LeBron James that. He had to go to Miami to get some help. No shame in getting help. Derrick Rose is a superstar. Not a star, a superstar. He needs players like Boozer who had a career year and reemergence last year, step up to play like that. Joakim Noah has worked with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar over the summer, developing a little bit of a sky hook. He's going to need him to step up. He's going to need a bench to step up. Todd Gibson's got to develop his game a little bit more. Instead of being solely a defensive player who can occasionally make a big dunk or two, he's got to be more of a guy who can get some shots going himself. Lou Oldang's the guy who needs Rose to get him open and get his shots. Then you got Rip Hamilton and Mike Dunleavy. Mike Dunleavy's good. That man can ball. Stretch the floor. Hit the open shot when you need him. He was like a Kyle Korver for the Chicago Bulls when they went to the Eastern Conference Finals against Miami, and they lost to him eventually in 5 games, but most of those games were really close games. Went down to a couple possessions there, and the Bulls were a younger team, less experienced team, under first-year head coach Tom Thibodeau at the time. So the Bulls, a little more experience in the playoffs. I think they'll be ready to go. But will they deter Miami? They might not even be the second best team in that Eastern Conference, because people saying Indiana, and people might say the third team, Simpson. And I think you know where I'm going with the third team.
Yeah, the Brooklyn Nets. Earlier this summer, the Nets, they did a trade to get Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Jason Terry, who a lot of people tend to forget, from the Boston Celtics. So Samir, what do you think about them? Do you think they could be a threat to Miami this season? Like, what do you really think about them?
Let's put it in perspective. Last year, I think when people thought Brooklyn got Joe Johnson, people thought maybe this will put them over the top and get a title. You can't buy into hype. Just because you have stars doesn't mean you win a title. As a Laker fan myself, I saw the Lakers get Karl Malone and Gary Payton,
Yeah, I
four Hall
remember
of Fame
that.
players.
I remember that.
You know what happened at the end? Well, there was injury concerns too. Karl Malone was injured. Gary Payton had injury issues. Shaq was dealing with injuries, and he had a team that really was deunified because of the Kobe and Shaq tension. All right, but getting back to the point of the Brooklyn Nets, there, you got Pierce and you got Joe Johnson. There's a couple issues I see with that. Who's gonna take the shot at the last moment? Joe Johnson hit some game-winning shots last year for the Brooklyn Nets, so it wasn't his value. It wasn't that he wasn't valuable to the team. Is that he's a little bit overvalued in terms of the salary cap and how much they pay him. I think they paid him 120 mil or 100 around 100 120 mil for 5-6 years. That's like 20 mil a year.
And don't forget Darren Williams too.
Darren Williams, that's another contract they got to pay. But Darren Williams is worth the contract. He's just never had a formidable guard. Now Darren Williams, when he played for Utah all those years, even the first couple of years with Brooklyn, never had a second guy, a shooting guard that's reliable and can hit the shot consistently. Now he's got two, but the issue is, can Pierce stay healthy, and can Garnett and can Pierce and Johnson coexist? Getting to the KG point, KG a little bit slow last year's playoffs, getting up there in age, and Pierce is getting up there in age. Now, is this like taking it all in one bag? It's like going to the poker table and you're putting all the chips on one table. Will that get him the title? In all honesty, I think Miami will most likely repeat, or actually what I like to call a three-peat, a three-peat. I think they will, just because of the fact that I don't see any of those teams from the Eastern Conference challenging Miami to win that title. But in any case, last thing I'll say is, if you have the best player in the game, it certainly doesn't hurt you when you're going for that three-peat. And there's only been one other team to ever win. There's only been one team to ever win 4 straight NBA titles and go to 4 straight NBA finals, and that was the Boston Celtics under Red Auerbach at that time, back in the 1960s. So if Miami wants to go to 4 straight titles and win 3 straight finals, it's going to be a long road. There's teams hungrier than ever before. Not saying that they weren't hungry before, but there's teams that want to dethrone Miami, and I think they're tired of the attention Miami's getting. And I think the Bulls, the Pacers, and the Nets are the 3 teams you might want to watch out for.
And is that your ranking as to who are the top 3 teams? Like from number 1, 2, and 3. 1 being the biggest threat, 3 being the least threat. Out of those 3 teams,
I say it's gonna be the Pacers because of the emergence of Paul George as a superstar, and he can defend. And that bench, Stevenson, coming off that bench with Chris Copeland of the New York Knicks, who hit a start in his only game he started. He hit 23 points, and I don't know why Mike Woodson didn't even put him on the floor a lot of the times, which even implied Walt Frazier questioned that movement too. So you got him off the bench. You got Stevenson, who's willing to come off the bench. So you got a lot, and Stevenson's more of a bench player than a starting player because of the fact that he's a little erratic with the ball. I think the players and then the excellent coaching of the Pacers, led by Frank Vogel, will do a good job in keeping that team sturdy. I'm gonna go with Tom Thibodeau and Derrick Rose. Those 2 factors, I think those guys will end up winning a couple of titles before it's all said and done. I think the coaching, I think the defense, the tenacity, they don't quit on possessions. They don't take a possession off. Chicago plays with a lot of heart and grit. And I think, and with the addition of Mike Dunleavy, who like a Kyle Korver player, and the emergence of Jimmy Butler, who had a very good year last year, I think he's going to elevate his game to a point where I think the Bulls could potentially challenge Miami, but I still have them just behind the Pacers. And the third team is just because of age and attrition. If this was Garnett and Pierce in their primes, I think Miami's not only in trouble, they might be losing some sleep. But this is a much older team. You got some good pieces off the bench, even though Karolinko's a little up there in age, and the fact that he hasn't been healthy since 2008 and playing a full year in terms of. So it's going to be an interesting sequence of events to see how these teams unfold. But I think I got to give it the Pacers as the biggest threat, who took Miami to 7 games of the finals last year.
Well, thank you, Samir. There you have it. That's what my man Samir got to say about the Eastern Conference. So thank you for listening, and we'll see what happens in the East this year.